where I want it. You know what I'm saying? You see the little
Right?
bastards? Um, what's his name? Tommy sent me. Tom from Arkansas. He sent me this sandstone that he collected out of
Cool.
a freaking riverbank, and it does my pH just right. Because I was trying to explain that Turkanas are freaking Rift Lake cichlids because it's Lake
Yeah.
Turkana.
All
It
right,
used to be
gentlemen, we're
Lake
live.
Rudolph. We're live.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, you
sir.
didn't say nothing, bro.
Because I wanted him to see your tank.
Oh,
Look
what's up,
at
y'all?
why y'all
Not ready
serious.
for the whatever. What up?
Look at Steve. He's like a little kid that got caught.
No, bro. Like, yeah. Well, anyway,
I've never
yeah,
seen
that's
him out of
the
words.
thing between Riverine and Locker Stream, bro.
Okay.
What Roy said.
Hey.
Like a lake. You
Yeah.
know?
And you can have clear lakes. You can have, low flow lakes. A lot of American lakes are very, very, the turbidity is really high. They don't have a lot of flow through them. You could have a really fast water riverine. A lot of like your buffalo head cichlids where you've got a realific, a kind of a fish that hangs to the bottom. Or you can go into like almost a Chinese hill stream tank where you've got a very fast flow, and trying to replicate that in an aquarium can be fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can discuss it if you guys would ever really want to.
Oh, it's
You can replicate it.
It's gonna happen.
Well, yeah, and actually, there's a gentleman that has a channel, ABC Biotopes, and he manufactured himself a river tank, which is so neat.
Yeah.
I mean, he
with some PVC up underneath, and he's using power heads.
His is set up where he put a false bottom on it with glass, and he's got, I think, a pump that on one side it picks up and it basically runs the water to the top, and then at the end it'll go back under, and he's just kind of revolving it, so it's always has flow in one direction.
Yeah. So usually the way that I do it is I run basically like depending on the size of the tank. So I'd probably do it in like a 40-gallon, and I'd run a whole bunch of 3/4 inch PVC, and I basically make a frame so that you've got power heads that are pushing out of it going one direction, and then you've got inlets that it's pulling from on the other side of the tank, and it's basically spinning it. And I'd probably go with about 4 or 5 power heads pushing. Yeah, and then you jack on, with your Venturi, so it's pulling air, because it's got a lot of oxygen in a tank like that, so you want it kind of ripping and roaring.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and then put a kiddie pool outside and dump a whole bunch of rocks in, and keep swapping your rocks out as they get covered with algae, so that way your little hill stream loaches can graze on the biofilm.
Oh, okay. Now, is that also for some of those fast water moving plecos? Would probably be great for that type of a system.
Yeah, especially any of your like whitewater stuff. Like if you wanted to keep zebra plecos, that'd be where they're actually found.
So do you think that's the reason why they're struggling so much to breed them in standard tanks, because they're not really in the correct environment?
They're not in the correct environment. They oftentimes assume that most South Americans are all the same thing, so they're trying to push for lower pH, and they don't. That's not where they're found. I think also on top of that, a lot of people end up hearing the word pleco and they naturally assume that they're going to eat algae. Most plecos are actually carnivores.
Yeah.
We're talking about probably 80 to 90% would be carnivores.
Well, we're going in a different direction. Then people are going, wait a minute, we're supposed to be talking about lighting.
I thought y'all were supposed to be talking about lights.
Y'all ain't about to blame me this time. So. Y'all go ahead.
That's all my fault. But yeah, well, let's go ahead and formally start this. We already have quite a bit of people joining us today.
Give some shout outs first.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Oh, okay. All right. So it looks like we have the Nano Aquarium guy here. Jay, thank you for being here with us. Collaboration of Curiosities, Adele, thank you very much. Lady Rorschach, thank you for being here with us today. Lalo, how can you not have the Master Aquatics? How you doing, Eduardo? Hope you're doing fine. And then our ride or die, Corridorable Cali Aquariums. Hey, Jesse, thanks for being here. And of course, now that I guess what is it going to be? Ralphie Joe Aquatics. That's coming out pretty soon.
Ralphie Joe Aquatics, huh?
Yeah, Jesse, correct me, Ralphie. Is it aquatics or aquariums? But that's coming soon. Just like we're seeing here at Watts Water. That is Jeff. Jeff, thanks for being here.
Good, Jeff.
And then we have the other Jeff Kane. Thanks for joining us this morning. Muppets lurking and walking the dog. Okay, cool. Let's see who else. We have Lydia, though.
Lydia, that's my
yes
other half.
You better say hi.
Hola, mi amor.
That's the mandatory one. Nobody else matters,
bro. And then it'll be like, entonces, ¿no viste lo que ya estabas en el chat el otro día? Sí, mi amor, ya yo viste. ¿Por qué no dijiste nada entonces? Ya, porque estabas hablando sobre pescados, entonces estabas emocionado y ya. Okay, ya, está bien. So yes, I have to. Hey, babe.
Yeah, we got Be Whistle, the generic. Words are so difficult for me this morning. Degenerate fish keeper. What's up, Brandon?
Oh, because you're talking smack.
I know. Well, that and I'm only on 2 hours of sleep. So.
Oh, bro.
That does that.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
I'm thinking the word in my head, but I can't get it to connect to my mouth, and my mouth is going, nah. We're doing something else. And then we have Steve C from Big Shrimp It.
Yo.
So that's pretty much everybody that's here so far. I'm sure they'll be trickling in. But yes, today's episode, we are going to be talking about lighting. And that's kind of a suggestion that Roy had, but I kind of was looking forward to it because it always seems when I'm on either streams here on YouTube or on Instagram, that's always a topic that comes up. What kind of lights do I need? Do I need do I need like these super expensive lights to be able to grow stuff, or can I get away with just some generic LEDs? And then so we wanted to bring that discussion to table, so that's why we have our special guest here, Roy Williams. Thank you for joining us again. And
it's a pleasure as always.
I'm here to learn, to tell you guys the truth. I know you, Steve and Roy, they were going ham about kelvins and lumens and par. And for a minute I thought we were talking about golf. I said, yeah, I could do a par 4 and 3, but no, that's a whole different ball game. But yeah, so most of today I'm going to be kind of on the ride for this and listening and learning just along with you guys. I was telling them, because they're asking me, how much do you know about lights? I said, I know I can turn it on. I
heard you, bro. I was over there cooking on my drink.
He goes, how do you know your par? I said, I know I have a chain that they hang from, and I put them up and I put them down based on how bad the algae gets in the tank. That's how I know how my par is working. But no, in all seriousness, we'll let these gentlemen take it today, and we're here to learn as much as we can, because again, I've always hearing, especially people that are just trying to get into the planet side of stuff, that are always concerned about what light, how much light, what brand to buy. So without further ado, gentlemen, it's all yours.
All right,
Steve, where we want to start?
Well, I would say George said some pretty pivotal stuff. And the most I get asked all the time, and I think you can attest to this, Roy, is what brand of light to buy. The position that I find myself defending the most when it comes to lighting on social media and interactions with other enthusiasts, I would say, is plants don't care what brand of light you purchase.
No, plants do not care whatsoever. They have no horse in that rodeo.
They don't care. And a light from Home Depot is just as good in a practical application, depending on your purpose, as a light from Joe Schmo celebrity guy, sensational man. On
a lot of the budget, if you were to go with a higher end light, especially like an aqua illumination, if you went with an AI, like an AI Prime or an AI Hydra, especially for like a freshwater application, is controllability and programming. You're paying for the app. I mean, with an AI, you can control usually 8 different Kelvin spectrums all at the same time, and you can alter those minute by minute and get a program that will replicate sunrise, sunset, lightning storms. You can do all of this however you like.
Right.
Now, can you do that with a fluorescent? No, it just turns on or it turns off. That is all it does. Now, it does great if it's on, and it does great when it turns off, but that's pretty much your controllability. So a lot of your high-end lights it's controllability and ease that can be really kind of fun.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard once, and I was like, I really didn't say much. I knew it sounded incorrect, but I kind of restrained from saying anything just because, again, my knowledge of lighting is somewhat limited. And the person on the stream was saying that you got to have good lights because it helps your fish to prevent deformities. And when he was saying that, it just sounded so wrong because I've always been known that the lights are for our enjoyment. That's it.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Right. And if you're not keeping plants or coral, dude, lights are entirely for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude, they are fine in the dark, living in the dark their entire lives.
This is a perfect segue to the visual aid that I put on the screen. Lights, for the most part, if you're not growing plants or running coral or any other photosynthetic, lights are for us. And this right here is the visible light spectrum. So this is what's visible to the human eye. Mm-hmm. And if you want to elaborate on that, Roy.
All right. So this spectrum, oftentimes you'll see lights marketed initially. You'll come into a color spectrum. Mm-hmm. Usually they'll refer to that as a Kelvin spectrum, and it can go from almost 0 to, I've seen it up to 20K, K being 1,000. 6,500 is pretty much daylight spectrum. The visible light spectrum that you have up highlights 2 spectrums or 3 spectrums that we'll see usually marketed in reef aquariums, and that is a nanometer or NM spectrum, and you'll hear 420, 440, and 480. Those are actually kind of purple, a deep purple. And what it will cause certain corals to fluoresce. Okay. So whenever you see a reef tank where the corals seem to be a light and glowing, that's actually a weird kind of just an oddity that occurs amongst some corals, and it's an actinic spectrum.
That's what, yeah.
So yeah, I was kind of showing that because you'll see those numbers, and 420 is a little bit more blue. 440 is usually what you see as an actinic spectrum, and 480 you start bumping into what we would call ultraviolet So
Right.
you can actually have a UV effect on the tank.
Okay.
It will actually kill bacteria in the water column.
Yeah, I was grabbing some light bulbs to use as visual aids. Now, when you're talking about this blue spectrum, because I just had this come up the other day. I was talking with somebody. So the blue spectrum and the green spectrum, but namely that blue spectrum, that's what's going to kick that anthocyanin production in your plants, because your plants are producing that anthocyanin to prevent, it's called photosynthesis, and it prevents tissue damage in the plants. So when you hear like all the arguing and stuff, and then the aquascaping and blah 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 with the red plants, I'm going to put it in simple terms. Think about if you're driving somewhere, it's a beautiful day outside, but it rained that weekend. You're stopped at a red light. You look over to your side in the median, there's still some water remaining from the rain that had passed the previous weekend. In that water, you see plants growing in that shallow water. That water is getting beat by full sun continuously for the duration of the day. That is the environment that is being replicated, because that UV light is destroying the tissue. So to prevent the chlorophyll from being damaged so that it can continue to do photosynthesis and move sugar and water through the vascular processes that it does, making the food that plants make, via the energy from the sun, it makes anthocyanin to help it be able
Protect
to
itself.
Right. And it's just sunblock. So when you're thinking spectrum and you're thinking purpose, it's not, hey, let me go spend this money on this light and tweak the CO2 and cut the nitrates and the nitrites. Those are processes that really don't have nothing to do with the result that you're trying to emulate. So just a simple understanding of what the result it is you're trying to emulate will help you hone in on what it is, what variables you actually need to tweak with. Because I see it all the time. People, pour this in it, put this in it, X, Y, and Z. What I've learned with red plants is it's a spectrum. It is a CO2 saturation issue, and it's also an iron issue. So your macro and micronutrients, but namely iron. And if you control those things, you have red plants. It's literally replicating a ditch. I don't want to be, anticlimactic, but that's literally what you're doing. You're replicating a ditch.
Oh yeah. And so usually with most lighting, there's a lot of different parameters that you're holding on to, and you really need to understand and study. Lighting comes in a lot of different forms. You can have incandescents. I remember using incandescents. They're not exactly a common one any longer.
No.
Then we kind of moved over to fluorescents, and they came in a wide variety. First, we had the really bad T12s, and then we moved over to the T8s. Then we kind of moved over into compact fluorescents, and then we started getting into the high VHO or very high output. And we had T5s, T2s.
Yeah, T2s are like the little skinny little.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember seeing those. And then we there was at about that same time, we started seeing a small amount of hobbyists, mostly a lot of the metal halides and, sodiums, the real kind of high-end lighting that was mostly limited to reef aquariums. But we did see some of that move into planted tanks. There's a few of them on like the old planted aquarium forums that I saw. They'd have to move it really far away. The problem with a lot of those really high-end metal halides and stuff was heat.
But arguably though,
they replicate great light.
Exactly.
It's just,
I mean, a Dutch tank with a pendant light.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can't beat it. Like I got these halogen. I got a few different ones to kind of get people, in the right track. Like lighting has come so far, it's not even funny. And what I mean is the stuff that Roy's talking about, it was so niche back in the day that the average hobbyist that works a 9 to 5, Monday through Sunday, like unless you had to have access to it or you were like really, really serious about it, you weren't going to have that kind of stuff. You're not getting metal halide. You're not doing any of that.
And honestly, most of your coral tanks that ran metal halides, if you wonder where chillers came in,
it's because
chillers were made because of metal halides,
right?
Because they were so hot, you would cook a tank, and they would usually drop out. I remember having to replace almost 2 to 5 gallons of water a day that it would kick up, just being that hot. And that chiller was running all the time. And if that chiller broke, your tank crashed.
You had a crab boil is what you had.
Oh yeah.
You had a seafood boil. It's like, but now we got lights like this is a 50-watt halogen bulb. Back in the day, there's no way I would be able to hold a 2-prong halogen bulb like this. And it's got the holographic reflector built in. And we were talking about this earlier before y'all came up. This is actually a single point light source right here. This is what a single point light source looks like. There's one diode, it's a single point. This is where the shimmer comes from. This bad boy right here. Let me see, can y'all see that? And this is just a 50-watt halogen bulb.
Yeah.
And once you start getting into it and educating yourself about lights, you can go somewhere like Batteries Bulbs Unlimited and just act a fool, or Home Depot, hell, even Walmart. Like you will look at the light bulb section completely differently once you understand it. And then you can understand the sky's the limit when it comes to practical applications in the hobby. Like if I show y'all some of the stuff that I jerry rig, y'all wouldn't believe that the results I get is what I get from what I'm actually using. And I don't sensationalize it. I just like to look at my stuff, Yeah. So go ahead, Ron.
And knowing your, when you're talking about a single source, if you have like a long lamp, like a fluorescent or a multi-LED array that, you see like on a Fluval, where it's got multiple LEDs, you're not going to achieve that shimmer effect. You need it from a single point. That's why Kessels are so heavily sought after. You need a single source of light. That way, and the next thing you need to do is you need to ripple up the surface. You need that surface kind of rippling, and that's actually what's going to give you the shimmer effect. So oftentimes I will literally mount on big client installs. I will put on a little bitty circ pump, and dude, it serves no purpose other than to ripple up to have the water move at the surface, and that will actually create that shimmering effect. But if you have multiple LED, like multiple points of light, it actually stops the shimmer. It gives you one solid blank, canvas of color. Kessels are really great for that shimmer. If you want shimmer, dude, Kessels are a way to go. Now their controllability is a lot more limited than what you would get from like an AI.
Yeah, the only things that I've seen that sort of replicates that, and it's funny that you're saying that it had to be a single point, but they're more of those small like outdoor floodlights that are weaterproof.
Yep, but you've got that single kind of point of light as opposed to multiple lights.
Yeah,
because if you have multiple lights, it actually stops that shadow from playing.
Right.
Yeah, somebody was asking. I know this is not light related, but Lady Rorschach was asking. She had a question. She wanted to know any suggestions for the best chiller for a 40 breeder. Yeah, I think she's trying to for some oxalatos. I think is what she has.
All right. So, like, if I were looking for a chiller for a 40 gallon, is she running a sump?
Lady Rorschach, are you running a sump? I don't know. She's putting in here. I think what it is that she recently acquired a couple oxalatos, but I know that she's in the Northwest. And what I was immediately thinking is the way that I chill my my aquariums, and especially if she's got it indoors. I think if you just run a couple
water
of
changes.
No, just a fan over the top of the.
I was about to say if you have Amazon has a handful of like multi-fan setups with little computer fans that don't take much, and you can actually set that up with a controller. So like you're actually reading the temp of the tank, and it will turn on and off as it is, and it can maintain your temp. Now it's only going to get to the tank, the temperature of the room. It can't go below that. It's physically impossible. At least in that regard. Now, if you wanted a chiller, chillers are going to be expensive. You know, you're looking at least, I don't know, I think that they're close to $1,000 now. I mean,
unless you get one secondhand.
Yeah, secondhand. And basically you've just got a pump that you put in the tank, and you're just pumping water through the chiller. And then you have another tube on the outlet dumping it back in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, that would be the cheapest option. But even then, dude, you're basically running. I mean, I have seen people rig together a ghetto chiller.
That's what I was thinking. I didn't want to say nothing, but go ahead.
Okay,
That's
so
I was thinking the ghetto chiller, man, a tub and some ice and some tube.
All right, so the way that I've seen people kind of rig together a chiller is you take a small ice box, like one of the ones that you get up at Walmart for like sodas, and you rip out all the doors, and you put a garden hose, and you coil it around, and then you put a pump in either the sump or into the tank, and you have a controller. So that's going to turn on the pump or turn it off, right? Depending on the temp. So you've got basically a thermostat. It's a thermostat controller.
Mm-hmm.
And you get your hose filled with water from the tank, and as it warms up, it turns on the pump, and it pumps that water through, and the water in the hose that's been in the fridge, you've drilled it out so that hose is sitting in there, and it's gotten cold. So it's going to have kind of it'll have the same effect. Now, if that controller messes up, dude, you can drop that tank down into the 30s.
Yeah.
It's not, does it work? It can work. Dude, is it the best? Dude, not really.
I'm going to throw this disclaimer out here because this is Fish Plancy Moss, damn it. We tank here, all right? And sometimes, like for the greater good, it's just like sometimes you're going to lose some soldiers to science, man. It is what it is. Like the benefits outweigh the risk, and the casualties mitigate the learning because you want to save some money. But that's how we get developments and we get
I was about to say, so, I mean, you know, usually you can you can usually get one of those little refrigerators for what, a couple $100 and a hose. Exactly. And I mean, you know, as long as you're willing to play around with it, maybe a thermostat controller is probably about $100. So, dude, you're looking at $300-400 in versus $1,000. Right?
Or if you're paranoid, put a timer on it.
Right. And honestly, if you are using a sump, it has a tendency to distribute that really cold in the water prior to getting dumped back into the tank. So it might be a little bit you've got a little bit of a safer kind of mixing of the water. If you're just dumping it directly in the tank, then it can sit really, really low because it's going to stratify. So you might get a real cold shock to something in the tank. before your thermostat reads it.
That's what I was gonna say. I got a wine chiller over
Yeah.
there, and that's exactly what I got it for.
And I mean, if you set your temp in there to more in the 40 or 50 range, then you're not going to be so shocking as, you know, if you set it to 33 degrees.
Now I'm wondering, because I don't do axolotls. It's it's still a novelty to me. I think they're cute, but I'm thinking, wouldn't they just go through a brumation in Mexico? Wouldn't they go through a brumation period?
I'm not certain what the low
Like
temp
a hard
is
winter? You know what I'm saying?
in the lake that they're from. I'd have to do some digging to see what what is the lowest temp that you know that lake hits.
Right. But back to the light, y'all.
Okay, back to light. Sorry about that. We got sidetracked.
No, so we were talking about the spectrums and red plants, and then you got into we were talking about the VHOs, the T5s, T8s, all the different old school lights. So this visual here, Roy sent me this, and it's a damn good visual. And it just shows you a good ballpark average of where your Kelvin range is going to be at.
Yeah, the kind of color temp that you're going to look and perceive from the light. Right. So, you know, the lower you get, the more closer to reds and like deeper ambers and yellows. Mm-hmm. You know, center is more of a pure white. That's going to be your daylight spectrum. And as you start going further, you're going to start getting into the blues and the crisp whites. You know, you get into like 20K and you almost got like, it's almost
actinic, bro, ain't it?
It's almost actinic? Like, no. So like actinics would be in your like, I mean, eventually you would hit there, but I've never seen anybody try to like run normal lighting in that. I've seen some 20Ks and some 16Ks on some reefs, but it's a nice, like almost cold, like crisp blue.
Light, bro. That's like a reptile light.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So that's what I was just going to say. In the chat, leave your favorite color spectrum. I know Roy's. He knows mine. Jorge knows both of ours. I'll say them in a little bit. But as we continue here, y'all leave right now in the chat where y'all at? Like what color light bulbs y'all get, or when you get your LEDs, or like when you get your remote like this one and you set your spectrum, like what recipe? Because I got light recipes. Which recipes do y'all like on your settings and stuff like that? So leave it in the chat if you will. Because I got mine.
And you know, something that we can simply like look at a tank and try to make a judgment call, but suffice it to say our eyes are fairly poor at actually determining intensity. You know,
yeah.
So there is an instrument that you can acquire that can actually tell you and dial in exactly your intensity, and usually it's a big disc. And it comes with a little reader. They're usually
a par meter.
So this is a par meter. This is actually how you would measure your intensity. So you could actually measure, and you're going to get different intensities in different spots of your aquarium. As you get towards the edge, it's going to get darker than it is in the center, especially if you have a single point source, or if you have a bar, your layout's going to be a little different. But then you could raise it up to your desired intensity, and you could actually literally read it. So you can actually be a bit more scientific about it. You'll see this oftentimes with reefers. A par meter usually runs about $200 to $300. So a lot of people don't really want to.
Right here.
You know, they don't want to pay for a par meter, right? Nobody's like, oh, dude, you know, I want to buy a par meter. A lot of times, if you're in a big town, your local reef group will have bought a par meter and they will rent it out for like 20, 30 bucks, and you can use it and check all your tanks, and then you just give it back to them. And that way, one person just has to kind of pay for it, and then they can just make a little bit of money back on it.
So this is a cool toy right here that I got that, like, if y'all don't live, like, we lucky, we live in the city, so we got clubs here. So like if you don't live somewhere where a club is close, I got plants everywhere, and I use artificial light, and I like to play with gadgets. And I have a par meter, and you can use the free one, and if you know what you're doing already, it'll give you a ballpark, and I'm okay with that. But if you want to get into it, this app is called Photon, and it is the coolest thing ever. And I do like research and reviews. I wouldn't say get it if it was trash. Like, real plant people use this, and that's who recommended it to me. But it's called Photon, and it's a par meter that you can download on your iPhone. Can y'all see that?
Yeah, let me ask you something, Steve. Can you actually? Well, granted, your phone's got to be able to do that. But if you were to put that in your tank and set it at the bottom, would it still be able to read a par light? The par of the light. Or is it just more for houseplants?
It's for houseplants, this one. So hear me out. I got it to check the par for that little nano reef I put up, and to check the par for that little cube I did. Because believe it or not, I put a little more into it than just throwing some plants and substrate and water in there. And we're going to get into that in a second when we talk about the Diana Wallstead method of how to measure light saturation. All right, so like now I'm starting to expose my methodologies on the damn internet. So I use this tool, and it just gives you a ballpark. Now what I do is you can measure the par from your lights, because your lights aren't in the tank. And you can measure the distance and then factor in how water refracts light and get a ballpoint. But the most accurate one is the one that costs the money you go borrow. But this is a fun tool to get you interested, to get you playing with it, and at minimum familiar with the terminology of the tool so you understand what you're doing in the first damn place.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? It's called, if you want to play with it, it's called Photon. And it's really cool, believe it or not. It's got different little settings for different light sources, like a tungsten bulb. So it's got CFL, CMH42K, incandescent regular, incandescent halogen. Those are the free settings. Then you start paying for full spectrum LED, red, blue, LED, white, high pressure sodium, standard, high pressure sodium, what is that? DE? What does DE stand for? I don't remember. I ain't even
I don't know if I've ever come across that, but
that's weed lights, bro.
Right.
Fluorescent warm, fluorescent daylight. I forgot what DE stand for. CFL, compact fluorescent, compact metal halide, compact metal halide agro, metal halide standard, and direct freaking sun. So it's a cool little toy to play with if you want to play with it. And if y'all got money like that, y'all pay a little $9 or however much it costs, you can play with them all. And it's just cool to get used to using a par meter.
And remember that, moving your light source, away from the tank, raising it or lowering it will increase its intensity. Also, utilizing black water can actually reduce par. Remember that your tannins. Water, your tannins in the water can actually reduce and destroy par. So there's a lot of kind of angles you can kind of play with. Also, using some screens at the top of the tank can also like limit your par.
Diffusing the light.
Yep. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of approach it. Just because something doesn't work, there's always usually a workaround. You just got to think it through.
Right. And speaking, so I'm gonna throw up this next visual for the people and kind of walk them through that right there.
But us being quiet, is that the visual?
No, bro. No, bro. I'm getting it right, bro.
What are you doing? Staring contest? See who blinks first
Yeah.
or what?
It's all good, bro.
Yeah, cheater, you got your glasses on. How are we going to see if you're blinking or not? There we go.
It's all good. So
Again, another kind of
you on
look.
one today.
Yeah, another look at the kind of Kelvin temperature range. Understanding the lighting that you're choosing. So if you wanted a kind of a nice amber hue, going for like a 3000K, that soft white is actually going to achieve that effect, especially if you were wanting to highlight those kind of dark tannins in a tank. That might be a really good choice.
Mhm.
And if you were wanting a weakening, a 20K would actually give you that like almost ghostly color that you're going to see on a deep water Lake Tanganyika, large tank.
Let me ask you something. Does the temperature or the kelvins, does that correlate with your growing of the plants, or it doesn't matter?
Generally speaking, they're going to grow best around a 65. 65K is going to be best. They will grow in 3000. They will grow up to 10K. You start getting into like 12 to 20K, and we start getting into some really weird light that they don't normally get exposed to. This would be very odd light that's not really even found on our planet. I mean, unless you're in space.
So what?
Which I guess is.
What color spectrums for the people out there? Like my favorite one is 65, and then I like warm lights too. For some reason, they just look really good on certain plants, and it depends, right? So depending on the texture of the plants and the foliage color of the plants. I mean, I can adjust the photo period to give them what they need, and we're going to get into that. I'm going to let you talk about that, Roy.
All right.
I can adjust I use it, and I wanted people to think about using lights in terms of a stylistic medium, because at the beginning of the show we did say the lights are for us, and that rule doesn't change when you're growing plants. However, the plants rely on the light. So there's certain requirements that have to be met. Once those requirements are met, you can use the lights as stylized elements to achieve the aesthetics that you want. And that's what I'm trying to articulate. So I can adjust the photo period, and I can have that warm light and deep green foliage. I can emulate a Blackwater look by the way I set up my light recipe, and by adjusting my photo period, can make sure I don't nuke my tank or have any of my plants deficient in the light they need.
Exactly. And honestly, I prefer an 8,000 to 10K mix on a lot of my planted tanks because it punches in a lot of really white, crisp light. Yeah. Every time that we've had kind of tank tours where people come over and look at my tanks, they go, "Why do your tanks look so crisp?" And you're like, "Dude, it's the light. It's the light that you're noticing," because almost everybody ends up going with the 65. They rarely ever see a 10K on a tank, and they're like, "Wow, dude, it looks crisp." Now in my fish onlys, I really like starting to get into like the 12K to almost 20K spectrums.
Yeah.
I think it
that deep lake look, like
it gives that deep lacustrine look where you're kind of seeing that light dappling, and then I'll back off of the intensity, so it gives you just that. And especially if it's a single point and you're getting that dappling, you can really kind of achieve that look that you see when you're doing a deep dive 40-50 foot down on Lake Tanganyika.
So, like, to give y'all a visual of what Roy is talking about, because I'm already knowing, I know exactly. To give y'all a visual of what the homie talking about, think about the cinematic poster for the movie Jaws. Okay? And I'm talking about the one, not the one where he in the water and it's just got the word Jaws with blood writing on it, and it's the blackness, that eeriness of him and him Jaws in there, and that right there, that effect right there is the effect that Roy's talking about emulating. And I've seen a few the 2000, because they didn't do it for COVID, so it was the 2018 or 2019 International Biotope Competition entry. Couple cats did lock a stream or tried to. And you know them judges don't play. They were eating them alive, bro.
Oh yeah, dude. Lacustrine is really hard for a biotope, especially if you get into like the rift lakes.
They were beautiful. Like, I mean, if you didn't know no better and you was just like, hey, and A for effort, bro. Wonderful, wonderful works of art. But yeah, them judges did not play, bro.
Oh yeah, and you've got to know your collection point variations, and you've got to know your rock strata, and you got to know the color of the substrate, and and honestly, even plants. People think you can't do a Lake Tanganyika or Lake Malawi and have plants, but dude, there are plants in the lake.
Exactly, they're in there.
Oh yeah, I had somebody ask me. They said, "Well, no, dude, you can't use driftwood in a Lake Tanganyika tank." And I said, "What is it? There's some magic that says that in Lake Tanganyika that wood doesn't fall in it, dude. Are you crazy,
man?" All right,
wood falls in that lake.
We're gonna segue, but we're not gonna segue. We're at 46. Let's finish up with these lights because we're talking about this lacustrine environment. And a shout out to Jay Watts. So like last year, no, 2021, Watts hooked me up with some Turkana jewel cichlids. All right, Hemichromis exul. And I wanted to set up a biotome, so a biotype, not necessarily a biotope. They're different. So I did a biotype. So it's inspired by their lacustrine environment in Lake Rudolph.
What's the difference between the biotope and a biotype? Because I hear that thrown out so much, and I get the feeling that people are misconstruing what one is and what the other is.
Okay, so I'm going to be as clear as I can because I don't want nobody coming for my ass. The word biotype is a biological term used in biology when describing taxonomy, okay? However, when using it in the aquarium hobby, the word biotope and biotype, word biotype is to differentiate an inspiration, so a rendition of a specific biotope, whereas a biotope literally tries to, as accurately as possible, portray identically said habitat in nature.
Yes, so I did a biotope for our local nano contest, and I literally went down with
which one you do? Which one are you talking about?
It was just for a little local GHAC one. But I went down with 2 5-gallon buckets to a ditch, maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes from the house. And I collected sand, water,
I remember that.
Leaf litter, plants. I did like literally everything. And I caught all the fish there.
2017 or 2016.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's what the Gilberti, the ditch with the Gilberti with the.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, I'm tracking. That was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that would be a true biotope because inherently you're not using, sand that looks like. I'm literally using the sand.
So let me throw another one out here, and this will hit with you, Jorge, because of where you work at.
The reason I was gonna say this because I've seen on YouTube
Yeah.
So the guys that are the people, because it's not necessarily always men, but the people that go out, take an aquarium to a waterway and literally collect what's there and put it in the aquarium, that is a genuine biotope, correct?
Yes.
Yep. In all intents and purposes, yeah.
No.
And that's what I was getting at. So like where you work at, so like the waterways, plants, invasives, etc. When you're doing a biotope, for example, I'm going to do a biotope on Yucatan, Mexico, right? And I'm going to use Pasilids. I'm going to put my mollies and stuff in there. I'm gonna do as accurately as I possibly can. I'm going to do a tidally influenced brackish canal, like from Quintana Roo, some damn where over there. Okay. Because of invasive species, you can check the database, and just because it's not a native doesn't mean it hasn't been introduced and established. I'm going to give you an example. Rotala, Vallisneria. This is global now. Luigia. This is global now. So there's a lot of common plants that you see in the hobby. A lot of these plants had their origin in Asia, or in the Indus River, or in the Ghats region, or in Indochina. Because we were talking about temperate plants the other day, because I was saying my pogo stem, and it'll take a freeze because it's a temperate plant. When people think of China, they think like not cold for some reason. I don't know why, but it's temperate. You just look at longitude and latitude, and it'll tell you the temperatures these plants have evolved to tolerate. But getting back to the biotope, looking at that data, you can actually see how invasives have become incorporated into a biotope. And what we're saying is a biotype is misleading, or saying that a biotope is a biotope and it's not, it's misleading. Using the word is misleading because people don't understand the concept. Like you see Tank on YouTube and they'll say it's an Amazon biotope and they got all the fish from Asia in there, or vice versa. Yeah, I see that a lot, you know, Asian biotope, and they got tetras and shit in there and angelfish, you know, but it's people, and this is what it is, and it's confusion, and it's okay.
Here's basically, I think the short way around it is a biotope is basically just everything that is collected from the source site.
Yes.
And a biotype is replicating that exact source site.
Right. So like a biotype might be a tank that is made to look like the Orinoco River, and you sourced fish that were all from the Orinoco, but you might not actually find those fish. Some of those fish might come from the northern Orinoco, some of them from the south Orinoco, you know, and they might not actually have ever seen each other in the wild. Now, that's a great Orinoco biotype.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I was about to say is people, it's just confusion. People confuse naturalistic aquariums with the word biotope. So when someone sees an aquarium with sticks, rocks, water, leaves, usually tannins, something like that, a naturalistic setting, most of it's mistakenly called a biotope oftentimes. That's all. It's just confusion. But if you really just want to get into it, like what Roy said, the Amazon is huge and it's so diverse. So diverse. So to say I'm making an Amazon tank, then you come across like me or Roy, and we like, oh really? Ooh, what you doing an Amazon tank? What you got going on? And they tell you they got They got Buenos Aires tetras. They got black skirts. They got a pair of checkerboards. They got some marble hatchet fish. Some kind of way they got their hands on some Nanostomus eckies. And
Yeah, none of those fish are found together in the wild.
And they got a red cactus pleco and a gold nugget, all in a tank with some driftwood and a bunch of Anubis.
It's a very cool Brazilian biotype tank.
And Anubis ain't even from South America. But
a lot of times we have a hard time finding certain plants from certain regions. You know, they can be really difficult if you're trying to go for a biotype or even a bio kind of a replication of a biotope. You know, it can be really hard.
It's just, and it's all relativity. Because like me, I study a discipline of botany. I understand that there's no such thing as a weed. That's a relative term.
Oh yeah. It's all subjective.
It's very subjective. So,
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you good.
No. I was going to say,
great, bro.
I know when I first started coming in, I didn't. My lack of understanding was I would see a tank and somebody say, "Well, this is a biotype," and you look at it and it's all algaed out. And I was going, "How can that be a biotype?" Because in my mind, I was thinking aquascape tanks. You know, it had to look pristine and all that. But when in reality, when you start watching footage from the actual waterways, yes, algae is the predominant thing in a lot of these places. So, you know, just because somebody says the tank that looks like it's been neglected and they call it that, don't be quick to say, oh, that's just trash. No, it's actually replicating something out in nature. And no, I'm not trying. That's not my cop out for algae tank over algae in my tank.
Oh yeah, and honestly, you know, there's a lot of tanks that's just it can be really challenging to. You can work with some really wonky parameters. We had a guy in San Antonio that brought in a whole bunch of what are they called? They're soda lake cichlids. From Lake, all right, it's going to come to me. It's going to come. It's one of the rift lakes. They're a little bit odd. It's a real shallow lake. It's only about 3 to 6 feet deep at any point.
TFH article on those cichlids because it's an oddball cichlid that you don't get all the time.
But their temperature was really hard. We had a hard time finding heaters because. Well, dude, their low temperature is 90, and their high temperature that they'll tolerate is 115.
Jorge, you need to get them damn fish, boy. For real.
Now that is, dude. So we actually did find heaters that can kick up to that and maintain.
Yeah, it's called the Arizona desert.
Yeah, Jorge, that could be your niche, bro.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Those are not the ones that are in the hot springs, are they?
No, it's
lake. It's like an alkaline hot lake.
Yeah, the pH in that lake is generally about a 12.5. When birds fall into it, they actually mummify.
Hey, you watch the nature shows, Jorge?
Yeah.
You know how they be showing the flamingos and shit, and they breed in lakes like that.
Okay.
Yeah, they have one in La República. It's called Lake Enriquillo. And it's the same. It's like the same phenomenon that happens.
Lake Natron.
Lake Natron.
Yeah, Natron, and Natron is actually the name for the primitive, like the natural forming salt that was mined, that was found all throughout the Sahara region, and that's actually what the Egyptians would use to pack corpses to dry them.
Oh, okay.
The
Natron. Why the birds babblify?
The Natron.
Yeah. Sorry, dude. Weird things that Roy knows.
Anecdotal. No, that's crazy. That's the white stuff they put on the mummies in Natron.
Yep, that's how you dry out mummies.
Yeah.
And
me and Roy could talk about morbid stuff all day, y'all. So just so you know, we talk about like weird shit. Like we actually on the show. So yeah, sometimes we forget we on the show. So please forgive us. Back to the lights.
Back to lights.
All right.
Okay, so the next thing we should probably talk about is photo period. And this is a weird term that sounds a little bit clunky and sounds very scientific, but arguably it's just, when does your lights turn on and when do they turn off? How long are you exposing your tank to lighting? And what is the intensity? So a lot of like regular fixtures aren't going to have ramp ups and ramp downs. So it's going to be pretty much entirely on or entirely off. So that one, you probably only need anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. I mean, imagine that most tank lighting, especially at pretty optimal amounts, would be a huge amount in the wild. A lot of us think, I've seen people running their tank lighting for like 10, 12 hours, and you're like, dude, nowhere on Earth gets that much sun all day long.
You know what? No, it's funny you bring that up because I'm always telling Watts, like, man, I do Alaska all the time. See what it does. And I got, you know what? I was showing off the other day on Instagram, and I was showing off my bryophyte tank, the one with the moss and ferns in it, and it's just got some cherry shrimp in it. That damn thing is a lamp. It's Alaska. I turn it off when I remember to. Because most of the time I pass out, and I'll be like, man, I'm comfortable. I don't even want to get up. Fuck it. And I just go to sleep. For real.
Another cheap way to handle lights, if you have an on-off, dude, don't kill yourself. You're gonna forget. You're gonna get off time, dude. Go and buy a Amazon or a Google smart outlet and program it on your phone, dude. It is super simple, dude. It's dirt cheap, dude. It is a easy way to do it. Okay. I don't run any of my tanks without timers.
We got to distinguish between dirt cheap and Sanchez cheap.
Oh boy!
Because
you might just need to get one of them analog timers.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Like you.
Analogs.
And analog timers.
I don't want to spend more than $6 on a timer.
Yeah, get one of them analogs then.
Hey, I can dig. It's sometimes whenever people will ask, and dude, you can really customize those, especially so. This kind of walks into if you're having like a lot of low tech people, you probably heard about Wallstead, and Wallstead noticed something. Basically, whenever your lights come on and you're turning them and it's full on, you're not ramping them up. And this happens in the wild. Basically, when your lights come up really hard and fast, your CO2 levels have maxed out overnight. So that's your highest CO2 level, right? And within the next 2 hours, it's going to plummet down to 0. So the only thing, all your plants require high CO2. And you're basically, if you have one solid 7 or 8 hour photo period, you're running almost 6 hours of that at basically running at 0. So they do no good for your plants. So what she argued is turning off the lights after about 3 or 4 hours and giving it a 2-hour siesta.
Right.
And if you turn it off, the CO2 levels come back up. That will give your plants a second dose. So you actually are giving your plants, you're pumping up your CO2 levels in a low-tech tank. Okay. You'll actually have less algae.
Right here.
Yeah, and I remember listening to somebody about breaking up the light. I didn't understand the concept behind it. And it's funny enough because that's the way my fish room's set up. And I know we were talking about the blackbeard algae on this. Now that you just mentioned that, I think, because I have them set up, I think it's 3-hour photo periods.
Okay.
But I'm thinking that maybe I need to cut back an hour on the second one, so to try to combat a little bit of that very.
Oh yeah. It could definitely do it, and you can see it. Literally, look at the chart, and you can see what's going on. And I love science, dude. She broke it down, and I was just thrilled to see that.
So, like, you want to break down the chart for him?
Oh, go ahead, because I'm on my phone, so I have a hard time seeing it all.
So so basically, like Roy was talking about, the CO2 absorption rate in plants is affected by the light. And as this chart is illustrating, they're showing the hours and the CO2 measurements and how they correlate when the lights are off from 3 to 5:30. So what's that? 2.5.
That would 2.5 hours.
Right. So, and you can see right here the red. You can see the market spike in every parameter. Let's just say that 30 minutes, right damn near at the 30-minute mark.
Yep.
Which is when the light, you can see the spike. And you can see it trend up gradually. And then you can see it go back down as the lights are back on.
Yep.
And then it'll stabilize. You can see that.
And once you kind of get about 2.5 hours in, your CO2 has your dissolved CO2 in your tank has pretty much depleted, and the only thing you're feeding is algae.
Exactly.
So if you want to feed your plants, dude, giving them that siestas will actually increase your plants and make them do better and actually combat algae.
So I do this outside because I guess the conception is, get you a greenhouse and kick ass and sell you some plants. The sun don't have a switch. You can't do nothing to it. It comes up and it stays up until it's ready to go down. So you got to get in where you fit in when you're growing plants outside, because nobody likes algae. I mean, I'm not going to send nobody no plants covered in algae. And even my personal water garden plants, I don't want them covered in algae. And what I've learned is using different things to cover for different periodicities to control that algae. And I was showing Jorge the other day, I use baskets. So I don't use covers in the sense of what you would consider a cover. I use the concept of diffusion. And this is from being the country some bitch paying attention. When you look at riparian areas of plants growing, usually they are growing in indirect sunlight that is interspersed and dappled by the canopy of trees accompanying whatever body of water that they grow in. Now, because the sun moves on its axis, there will be periods of time during the day when those plants are exposed to full sunlight. But the majority of the time, those plants are getting diffused light. So I was trying to figure out a cheap way to apply that concept. And I just started using anything that would fit over said container, that would diffuse the light, that was waterproof, structural integrity. So baskets, those crates that bread comes in.
Another thing that you can do is actually use marginals. That's if you get like those tall cattails, it actually limits your light because you're not getting that morning light because it actually blocks it.
Exactly. Same concept. And the reason I bring that up, Roy, I'm glad you said that about the cattails, because what this does is it low-key substantiates Dr. Wallstad's theory. And I don't even know if we should still call it a theory at this stage in the game. The science is there.
I think I think the science is there. Now, arguably, we can call it a theory. I mean, arguably, the gravity is a theory. So we can. Theory just means that it has not been. We don't have any evidence to suggest that it is wrong.
What about the God particle then?
Hey, dude, we can start getting into the Kalam cosmological argument.
No, let's take
let me ask you guys something.
Let's take the power and shit.
Something that I recently stumbled on, and that is, how do you discern credible information that is so-called scientific versus anecdotal stuff that is just somebody's opinion. Yeah.
Segway. So, go ahead,
You,
Roy.
so I would look at data, looking to find where their data and where they are drawing their conclusions. You should be able to analyze the same information and draw the same conclusion from it. And you should be able to replicate that. If you cannot replicate that, that's inherently what science is. That says, this is my test. And if you both can do the same test and you get similar or very close, then we can start determining why our numbers are different. Maybe your GH is a little bit higher or your KH is a little bit higher. Now we know our variables. But if we're replicating similar data points, then likely it works.
Right.
The reason I even brought it up is because recently, it was a comment that was left on one of my videos, and that were referring me to a document that was written. And the one thing that triggered me, or not triggered me, but that kind of alerted me to go, okay, let me back out a little bit and look at this a little bit closer, was that person that was had put together this document on aquariums and stuff like that, was that he was very adamant about talking about other methods as being invalid. And that's when I said, okay, at that point, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because there's a lot of things that people can do that don't necessarily fall into a certain pattern or mold, because there's more than one way to do things. And to somebody that's trying to put together a so-called scientific document, to start attacking off the bat and trying to discredit what those people have accomplished, to me kind of threw up a red flag. And that's when I told Steve, hey, dude, is it just me, or is this information seem wonky? And
sketchy?
He started looking at it first.
And then I lost my shit.
Oh, yeah.
Hell no.
I got a text.
Roy. Yeah, and then I was like, I'm getting Roy. Hold on. And I sent him to Roy. And then he was like, I'll check it out. And then I was doing homework, and then like, I don't know, Monday or Tuesday came, and Roy called me, and I was like, hey, what's up? And he was like, you got a minute? I was like, yeah, I can take a break. He was like, what do you think about it? He was like, asshole. Tell him what you said, Roy.
Oh, I did. Yeah, it's horseshit. Dude, you're talking about data he has no supporting evidence, and I could list probably 5 or 6 different points of an anaerobic zone in a tank.
Yeah, let's just do it. Let's stop being cryptic. Let's just
all right. So anaerobic, the argument was that there is no anaerobic zones in an aquarium. Now I will say that in most aquariums they are not common. But if you put in a huge piece of driftwood, I'm willing to bet you cut that driftwood open, especially if it's been submerged for years, a decade. Dude, I'm willing to bet that inside that driftwood, 100% you would find an anaerobic zone. There's no way that it wouldn't, because that oxygen doesn't diffuse fast enough to get into that region. I would also imagine that if somebody, he doesn't actually point out, he shows some data points about oxygen saturation in a substrate, but he doesn't actually differentiate between substrate particle size. So if you had sugar grade sand or just that powder fine sand, and you put a 6-inch layer, there's no way that you're getting oxygen down to the lower zone. You would become anaerobic. So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna. Isn't that because when you look at some of the deep substrate tanks, and it's so funny, because the one debate that I've been aware about, the two big public figures on Instagram that have been going back and forth at each other, unfortunately, which just kind of frustrates me, because I use both of their methods, Dr. Novak and Father Fish. So to have this guy come in here and try to discredit the both of them, I thought it was so funny. But one of the things that I've always heard is, like, in the deep substrates, the reason you're getting that is because you'll start getting some black fungus growing in there because there's a lack of oxygen. Is that correct? Or
Yes, I mean that's usually one of the indicators.
Go ahead.
Also, kind of you'll start getting odd off gassing. Now, some gassing does occur, but you'll get an odd off gassing. Usually, you're not getting like, especially if you were doing like a real deep, and that's not a very common tank.
Y'all
I mean,
go ahead. I gotta get a mineral water because I'm about to go ham.
if you were doing like a 6-8, I've seen, even some like 12, 14-inch deep, real deep tanks, especially inside of a reef tank. You see it a lot more in saltwater because you have fish that.
Here we go. There you go. Yep. I was just about to say it. Look, now, I did a project at the behest of you and a couple other people that we mutually know.
Before you get going, let Roy finish his what he was saying.
No, that's what it is. He knows.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So I did a project at the behest of Roy and a few other people. And the whole purpose of this project was to replicate the anaerobic Eurohaline tidal zones in mud to do a blackwater mangrove simulation. So I purchased mineral mud that was seeded with live anaerobic bacteria. I made a brackish blackwater tank specifically with a anaerobic substrate. I also at the same time simultaneously ran a 55-gallon tank. It was not deep substrate. It was just regular. I think it was only like 3.5, 4 inches at the deepest. It was anaerobic because I stratified it anaerobically. I did it backwards so that there could not be any stratification. I put the finest particles down first in certain zones in the tank. After about 18 months of leaf litter recharge, no vacuuming, so we got a benthic zone of mold and mud. It's off gassing. It's hot because of the microbial processes going on in the leaf litter. Also,
that's another good indicator.
Yes, is the composting.
Yeah, you're getting heat. I
was getting heat. I was getting the H2S, which was argued that H2S is a myth, that it does not occur. It cannot occur in aquariums.
I don't know where the hell they get that idea.
I'm trying to be scholarly, but I don't want to like lose anyone because I don't want to just get the cussing and being a sailor. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, and sugar don't taste salty. And just because you say it does, doesn't mean it does. And to tell everybody else that is eating sugar, that sugar tastes salty when we know that it's sweet, we've agreed that it's sweet, makes you arrogant and full of shit. And we can't progress in the hobby because you got two old fuckers arguing about dirt.
Oh,
literally.
Yeah.
I wanted other stuff to do.
I wanted to answer somebody in the chat that had asked what my channel was, and I don't really have a channel. I just come on here and
this has kind of become his unofficial.
Well, damn boy, that means they like you, so now you got to come up more.
Hey, whenever I'm free on a weekend, you know me, I'm always happy to hop on.
Hey man, but like,
I mean, you can see my notes that I've taken for today.
Already, like this is actually a damn good discussion. So speaking of the wood anaerobic zone, we're talking about locker screen environments. So right here, I'm running this. It's just a little 40 breeder, and we're going to answer several things that came up in this chat. The first one was somebody was saying something about wood in a locker screen environment, wood in a Rift Lake environment. And me and Roy both know you're a damn fool if you don't think there's wood in a lake, if you don't understand the concept that a lake in Africa ain't necessarily a lake in America. It's big and there's shoreline that looks like the beach that is literally littered with all types of different palm wood, hardwood from the forest, etc. So what I wanted to replicate was that specific zone where the wood becomes mineralized just before it's petrified, but not quite. And it occupies this specific zone. And that also happens to be the zone that the Turcanas thrive in. That's the zone that they occupy in Lake Rudolph. I had to pull it up on freaking ResearchGate. But that piece of Mopani wood, I guarantee you, I know for a fact it is. It's anaerobic.
Oh yeah, especially in the core. Now, dude, you'll get oxygen at the surface as it starts breaking it down.
Right.
But arguably, once you start getting that saturated core, it's going to be anaerobic because, dude, oxygen's not going to be able to permeate that wood, all that thick starch layer going in and out.
I'll pull up my phone, I guess. And we'll do that later on. I guess I can pull up my phone and show the people. But to get to your question, Jorge, of science, so when I looked at that document you showed me, I'm objective, man. A lot of the stuff I agreed with because I didn't just stick to that article. I did a deep dive, and this is all in transparency here. I did a deep dive and looked at some other stuff that they opinionated about to get a synopsis of what these people's ethos is so I can see their foundational knowledge, or at least discern it the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the stuff I agree. Okay. Yep. And then my conclusion was this is just somebody that feel this way, X, Y, and Z. No big.
And arguably, like looking over his documentation, he did decent testing. He just didn't account for. He seemed to specifically remove any odd things that I have seen in aquariums that would promote an anaerobic zone. And then he kind of seemed to suggest that anaerobic zones were completely absent because he didn't test those.
Right.
And you're like, well, dude, you can't just eliminate all the anaerobic zones and then just say all aquariums never have anaerobic zones. You just can't do that.
What I say is when articles like this, so here's the deal. If you're gonna claim science, you have to cite your sources. Yeah. I didn't see any footnotes, and I saw a reference to a study, and I'm like, this is fantastic. But then when I go and continue in looking at analyzing the document, I don't see no footnotes. I don't see no links. I don't see no references to said study so that I can look at that damn study too and formulate my own conclusion because maybe I was wrong and I stand corrected, in full objectivity. But when you don't see stuff like that, those are and should be red flags to y'all. When people out here claiming science, that's not necessarily science. And I told Jorge this the other day. Look, just because you've been doing something for so long don't mean it's right. You could have just been doing it the wrong way for a long ass time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And people don't realize that they have those informational biases, and it does what it does.
Yeah. Well, I was just made aware of something. Dr. Anthony is having his raffle in about 5 minutes now. For the trip for Peru. So I don't want to keep people here much longer than they need to be so they can get to that. And also I don't want to step on Dr. Anthony since he's, a supporter of the channel too. So
hey, right on. Yeah. Well, hey, it has been a pleasure talking with you guys. Absolutely. And hopefully we have given you enough information to be dangerous with lights now.
Don't play with the stuff. And real quick, the name of that app is Proton. Here, I'm going to show you it one more time. It's called Photon. Photone. It looks like this. I'm trying to get the thumbnail.
And
It's a black circle with a white circle with a square.
There is a Greater Greater Houston Aquarium Club, so GHAC channel, and there's a bunch of my lectures on there that I gave for the club. That's a YouTube channel, but yeah, they're from years ago. But you're more than welcome to dig around there. I give lectures local and occasionally for the AKA, and I don't know, whenever people ask me, that's really about it. I like YouTube. I don't know.
Understood.
Man, we just old-fashioned hobbyists, man. It's called find nerds that like the same shit you like, get their phone numbers, and stay friends with them for longer than 6 months.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, me and Steve been knowing each other for how long?
Shit, man, I don't know.
Way too long.
Yeah, that's dumb. I don't want to think. But no, Coro works. Yes, that's a power meter I play with. It's called Photon, and you can download it in the App Store.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and thank you guys for being here, and we'll catch you guys in a couple of weeks, and we'll let you know if we come up with another interesting topic, or we just decide to continue what we got going on now. But
we got tons.
Oh yeah.
So we still got to talk about diversity, ecosystems. Oh, we got so much.
All right.
Oh,
guys.
yeah.
Well,
thank you, man.
And you guys
Happy
have a good
Easter,
day.
y'all.
Happy Easter.
Good weekend.
All right.
Peace.